Venezuelan opposition says the country's parliament will refuse to dissolve, even if ordered to by the newly voted-in Constituent Assembly, which is set to hold its inaugural session on Friday. The international community has also weighed in with its concerns. The U.S. has been the most vocal, branding last Sunday's vote as illegitimate and President Maduro's leadership as a dictatorship. And as RT's Murad Gazdiev reports, being deemed a dictator is easy to come by these days.
Little did you know, there's actually two ways to become a dictator. There's the obvious way: brutally oppress your people, crush dissent, and rule with an iron fist. Method two: annoy America.
Yesterday's illegitimate elections confirm that Maduro is a dictator who disregards the will of the Venezuelan people.
That's going to hurt. When the U.S. brands you a dictator, all bets are off, even if you really aren't one. Any claim of your crimes is taken as fact. International law stops working. All your enemies suddenly get a lot of money and, in many cases, shiny new guns, courtesy of Uncle Sam.
In Syria, we have ramped up our military assistance to the Syrian opposition.
Remember what happened to Saddam or Assad. Blame them for anything, and it'll stick. The name of the game was regime change, exporting democracy. And that's a heck of a lot easier when you portray the other guy as the cartoon villain.
Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad.
Bashar Assad is a war criminal.
Thug and a murderer like Bashar al-Assad.
It's already begun. They're equating Maduro to Kim Jong-un. That's crazy talk, you might think. There are no concentration camps. There are elections.
Maduro himself, he joins a very exclusive club, including Mr. Mugabe, Bashar al-Assad, and Kim Jong-un, in terms of the brutal repression of his people.
What about this guy, the king of Saudi Arabia? His opponents are tortured and executed in public. His family controls everything in Saudi Arabia. He has deprived his people of freedom, democracy, choice. Talk about dancing with the devil. What does Washington do? Sells hundreds of billions of dollars worth of weapons to Saudi Arabia. How's that for double standards?
U.S. foreign policy is entirely hypocritical. I mean, they only characterize governments as dictatorial or authoritarian when they're not favorable to U.S. interests. U.S. maintains close ties and supports the monarchy in Saudi Arabia. That's one of the biggest abusers of human rights in the world. When it comes to putting labels on governments in other nations, it all depends on who's a friend or a foe of the United States.
Sad, isn't it? You can rule, oppress, and kill all you want without repercussions, but only if you bend the knee to Washington. Or you can do none of that and still wind up being called a dictator.